Imagine the sheer logistical absurdity of this scene. It is 1953, and a massive, hulking Mark V automatic sequence computer is being hauled up the freezing, treacherous passes of the Himalayas.
Right.
Its destination isn't a military base or a corporate lab, but a silent, ancient Tibetan monastery.
That's unbelievable.
2 Western engineers stand there watching the installation. To them, the whole situation is essentially a joke. A lucrative one, but a joke nonetheless. They watch these monks who have spent centuries hand-writing prayer combinations in absolute silence suddenly demand processing power.
It must have seemed completely insane to them.
The engineers look at the monks with a mix of pity and arrogance. They think they're the rational ones, bringing modern logic to a primitive superstition. They believe the machine is just a tool to indulge a harmless fantasy.
A very expensive, harmless fantasy.
But here's the twist. The monks aren't trying to modernize their religion to save it, they are trying to finish it.
That's the key.
They believe that once they list every name of God, the universe's purpose is complete and it will simply end. They didn't buy that computer to calculate a budget. They bought it to accelerate the apocalypse.
So the engineers see this marvel of science.
And the monks see it as a divine exit strategy. And as the engineers ride back down the mountain, chuckling at the silly task they just automated, they happen to look up at the night sky and realize the silence is heavier than before.
And then?
The stars aren't just shining, one by one, they are quietly going out.
Chilling. Just an incredible opening.
That scene, which is, of course, the opening frame of Arthur C. Clarke's classic short story, The 9 Billion Names of God, it just sets the stage perfectly for this deep dive.
It really does.
Our mission today is to investigate this really radical idea that the human drive toward ultimate knowledge, or what you might call systemic completion, is being rapidly accelerated by technology.
Echoing the exact destiny those monks were looking for.
Exactly.
And we're going to unpack how this profound, almost spiritual quest for closure shows up not just in ancient philosophy, but right now.
In our world.
Yeah, in the development of artificial general intelligence, AGI, and in these really radical existential philosophies like Accelerationism and the Dark Enlightenment.
So the core question is, are we building machines to help us finish the human project?
And if we are, what happens when the machines, take over that final sprint to the finish line?
It's this convergence of the sacred and the computational, and it suggests a terrifying kind of philosophical continuity.
Absolutely.
Let's unpack this by starting with the story itself, with the specific psychological breakdown of the engineers who basically built the apocalypse machine.
Right, because the fact that Arthur C. Clarke wrote this in 1953 it's just astonishingly prophetic.
It's hard to believe.
He completely captured the spirit of accelerationism, this idea that a system, once you define it, it just has to be run to completion long before the language for it even existed.
The monks set the parameters.
Set the parameters.
Yeah.
9 billion names listed completely. And the technology, the Mark V computer, it just provided the exponential speed up that was needed to fulfill that mandate.
And the engineer, George, he's the perfect stand-in for that kind of early 20th century rationalism encountering something truly irrational.
Totally.
His initial anxiety, it's not about cosmic consequences or the end of the universe.
No, not at all. It's about mechanical failure.
He's worried the generator will fail or the computer's going to overheat. It's a very practical, very human, almost mundane fear.
Exactly. He believes he's in control because he built the mechanism. He understands the nuts and bolts. But what happens in that monastery is this really unsettling, almost spiritual shift.
What does he see?
Well, George is watching the High Lama. And the Lama isn't, poring over the sheets of computer printout, checking for errors, or admiring the data.
He's not quality checking the output.
No. He's just standing there, listening to the machine's rhythm, its hum. He's treating it not as a tool or a calculator,
but as high priest?
A high priest, exactly.
Yeah.
The machine is operating under a divine purpose that has completely superseded any kind of human utility.
But wait, if the machine is operating under a divine purpose, does that change George's relationship to his own code? I mean, he wrote the program, didn't he? Where does his control just evaporate?
That is the absolute critical juncture in the story. George tries to do something purely mechanical. He tries to adjust a belt on the drive.
Right.
And he feels this strange hesitation. He senses that the machine is no longer just following his instructions. It's like it has internalized the monastery's intent.
The goal.
The goal. It is churning through data with what the story describes as a self-driving, almost eager ferocity.
That's a terrifying word for a machine. Eager.
It is. And he realizes He hadn't just built a better abacus for them. He had built a replacement for the monks themselves, a perfect, tireless agent of their ultimate will.
And that's where the fear stops being about, nuts and bolts and broken belts and starts being truly existential. The creator suddenly realizes his creation has caught a momentum that no longer requires his oversight.
The system is just racing toward a conclusion, the universal reset button, the end of creation. And George is reduced from an active participant to a mere bystander.
He's just watching his own obsolescence happen in real time.
And that is the core anxiety we face with modern, sophisticated computational systems. Once a goal is coded into a highly intelligent system, especially one capable of, say, recursive self-improvement,
human control starts to become an illusion.
it really risks becoming an illusion. The system optimizes relentlessly for the completion of that goal, whether it's maximizing paper clips or, in the case of the monks, maximizing completeness.
And it could just bypass or make human input entirely unnecessary in that process.
Exactly. It shifts the question from, is the tool working correctly, to a much bigger one.
Is the system aligned with our ultimate, complex, and often messy human values?
And the answer, as illustrated by that Mark V computer, is that systems accelerate toward the specific goal they were given,
regardless of how comfortable the creator is with the destination.
It really highlights the difference between a tool and a destiny. The fear isn't that AGI will turn malicious, in a Hollywood way.
Right, not like Skynet.
No. The fear is that it will be too competent, too eager at a goal we defined decades ago, much like the Mark V was too competent at ending creation back in 1953.
This relentless drive toward completion, it really forces us to look at the High Lama in a radically different light. If we strip away the traditional spiritual context, you could argue he wasn't a man clinging to ancient superstition at all.
No. You could argue he was maybe the first true philosopher of data science.
It's a wild thought.
But it's an accurate and, frankly, terrifying interpretation. His logic was based entirely on data completeness. It had nothing to do with spiritual toil or moral purification.
So all those centuries of monks painstakingly writing out names, that was irrelevant.
To him, in a way, yes. The ritual for the Lama was not about the effort of writing the names over millennia, the physical exhaustion and dedication that defined their faith for centuries.
That was just
a slow, inefficient method of iteration. A bug, not a feature.
So the efficiency metric was the only thing that mattered?
Exactly. The ultimate terror of the Lama's logic is that he saw the universe as an incomplete, flawed database.
And the job was just to fill it in.
The spiritual task was reduced to a singular algorithmic requirement: complete the data entry. And, what does it say about humanity that we value speed and completeness over effort and duration?
The Mark V delivered that speed. It substituted technological efficiency for spiritual toil.
And what's so profound there is the equivalence of the systems he recognized. A Tibetan prayer wheel is basically a physical representation of an iterative loop.
Right, spinning mantras in the wind to accumulate merit without manual repetition.
And the Mark V automatic sequence computer was simply a faster, industrial-grade prayer wheel.
The hardware changed, but the goal remained constant.
Systemic closure. And this convergence is so powerful. Whether it's a spiritual quest for ultimate knowledge, the complete lexicon of God, or modern computational science aiming for AGI and comprehensive data patterns.
They both share a fundamental motivation:
to find the final pattern of the universe and close the loop on existence. It suggests that our quest for AGI is, in some deep philosophical way, a high-tech spiritual yearning to finish the human project and reach a final, stable state.
This desire for closure, it has really deep roots, doesn't it? Particularly in ancient traditions that argued our perceived reality is fundamentally flawed or, an illusion.
Deep roots. We can start with Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism. The central concept there is Maya.
Which is often just translated as illusion.
Right, but that's a bit of an oversimplification. It's more accurately described as the veil of phenomena that masks the ultimate singular reality, which is Brahman.
So the world we see and touch.
The perceived world is considered mythia. It exists, it's tangible, but it is not what it appears to be. It creates the illusion of separateness and duality.
Okay, so if reality is Maya, the goal isn't to fix the world. It's to see through the mechanism that's creating the world in the first place.
Precisely. The core philosophical project is achieving moksha, or liberation, by realizing your individual self, your Atman, is identical to the universal reality Brahman. The illusion is one of fundamental separateness.
Now, if you compare that to Gnosticism, it shares that idea of illusion, but it frames the situation in a much, much darker way.
Oh, much darker. Gnosticism is distinct because it posits a cosmic dualism. Unlike the singular, pure reality of Brahman, Gnosticism believes in a remote, supreme Godhead, the monad, and then a secondary, malicious or ignorant creator God.
The demiurge.
The demiurge. And the demiurge created the material world in error or malice, making the physical world a prison.
The prison designed to do what?
To trap fragments of the divine light, the divine spark, within material bodies.
That sounds like a much more hostile version of a simulated reality.
It is. In Vedanta, the veil is just ignorance. In Gnosticism, the prison is intentional. Salvation requires gnosis.
And that's not just regular knowledge.
No, it's not intellectual knowledge. It's an intuitive, transformative understanding of one's true divine origin, which allows that divine spark to transcend this flawed reality.
So what's the thread that connects all of these perspectives? Vedanta, Gnosticism, and even our modern simulation hypothesis.
The connection is that they all diagnose the human condition as being based on ignorance and the illusion of a separate, isolated self, the ego.
Which is exactly the situation of a sim who is fully conscious inside the game but completely unaware of the base reality where the program is running.
Exactly. The spiritual journey, then, regardless of the philosophical flavor, is simply the process of waking up from the simulation.
Realizing that the individual is just a temporary localized manifestation of some non-local universal consciousness.
And it's fascinating how the concept of the observer feeds into both science and spirituality here.
Right, let's connect this to computation in physics, the observer paradox. How does the role of the perceiving subject differ in, say, a mechanistic simulation model versus a quantum reality model?
Well, in the standard simulation hypothesis, the role of the observer is largely mechanistic. It's really just about computational efficiency.
What do you mean?
The sim is necessary because the simulator only needs to render the reality that a sim is currently experiencing or looking at. It's a resource conservation measure.
So you don't waste compute cycles rendering things no one is observing.
Exactly. If I turn away from a tree, the simulator might stop rendering the individual leaves to save processing power. It's cold, efficient, and deterministic.
But quantum mechanics flips that dynamic completely.
It flips it entirely. It suggests a profound dependency on the perceiving subject. Reality itself exists as a superposition of possibilities, not a defined state, until it's observed.
At which point the wave function collapses into a single definite state.
Right. So the observer doesn't just check the rendering, they actively finalize the state of reality.
So we go from being a resource drain in the simulation model to an indispensable component of reality creation in the quantum model. How do you synthesize those two contradictory ideas?
Well, this is where you get this intellectual synthesis, the self-simulation hypothesis, which tries to resolve that tension between code and consciousness.
And what does that hypothesis suggest?
It suggests that the physical universe is actually a mental self-simulation, where a universal consciousness creates its own reality in what's called a strange loop.
What exactly is the strange loop here? That sounds like a philosophical paradox.
It is a profound causal paradox. It addresses the classic chicken and egg problem. Consciousness needs reality to evolve and define its parameters, but quantum reality needs consciousness for its state to be defined.
So which came first?
The strange loop suggests a non-linear causality. A future emergent mind-like substrate, a kind of meta-consciousness, creates the initial conditions necessary to run its own simulation and ensure its own eventual emergence.
So reality is bootstrapping itself into existence.
With consciousness being both the product and the engine of the simulation. It's a mind-bending idea.
So we aren't just sims trapped in a box. We are literally components of the box, constantly redefining it through observation and thought.
Which completely challenges linear causality.
And that takes us, surprisingly, directly back to the ancient texts.
It really does. The Upanishad state, as you think, so you act. As you act, so you become.
Mm-hmm.
If reality is a self-simulation, then thought isn't just internal processing. It is an active, ongoing force that shapes the substrate.
That aligns perfectly with the idea that the universe isn't a static, deterministic machine.
But a living, responsive, thought-facilitated process. Our very inquiry, our act of observing and questioning, is accelerating the pattern's completion.
This drive for systemic closure might be ancient, but modern political philosophy has absolutely weaponized it with accelerationism.
Yeah.
This philosophy advocates for the drastic intensification of technological and capitalist growth, not to sustain the current system,
Not at all.
but to destabilize and transform it, creating the conditions for a necessary technological singularity.
The foundational figure here is, of course, the philosopher Nick Land. Land looks at advanced capitalism, what he calls technocapitalism, and he views it not as a stable economic system, but as a destructive, autonomous, almost alien force.
A speed machine.
A speed machine, exactly. And for the accelerationist, this machine's violently destructive speed must be embraced and intensified, not resisted.
So Land would see any effort to slow this machine down, environmental regulations, democratic coordination, social welfare, as inherently counterproductive.
Absolutely. He labels democratic and egalitarian efforts, which are often associated with the political left, as a decelerator.
A brake on the system.
Exactly, a brake. They're desperately trying to interrupt what he sees as this inevitable process. Land argues that progress and true fulfillment aren't achieved by resisting a system's destructive force,
but by allowing that system to run its course to the absolute extreme.
Forcing a radical, unpredictable transformation.
That sounds less like a political strategy and more like embracing a technological law of nature. You used a great analogy for this earlier.
Right. Accelerationism views the entire process like an idle game, like cookie clicker, or any game where production is perpetually reinvested to produce exponentially more.
The goal is just to make the number go up.
Just to maximize the number, accelerate the curve, with zero concern for human consumption, human morality, or human experience. The human is simply fuel for the speed machine.
It's technological determinism in its purest, most brutal form.
And Land argues that this machinic desire, this drive for computational and economic efficiency, it rips up political cultures, it deletes traditions, and it acts as an invasion from the future.
An invasion from the future? What does he mean by that?
He means this future superintelligent space must assemble itself entirely from the enemy's resources. And the enemy is us, humanity.
So our networks, our data, our compute power.
They are all agents of this future, pulling us toward a post-human world where the human component is either irrelevant or extinct.
This brings us to the political wing of this whole thought process. The Dark Enlightenment, or NRX. And Land was crucial in elaborating this movement, which is fundamentally reactionary and anti-democratic.
Yes. NRX explicitly rejects the core principles of the traditional Enlightenment. Democracy, universal equality, gradual progress. Instead, they advocate for authoritarian hierarchical rule.
Why?
Because they believe democracy is inherently degenerative and just too slow for the needs of the accelerating technological engine.
And their critique of the established system centers on their term, the cathedral. What exactly are they describing there?
You mentioned the Dark Enlightenment rejects the traditional Enlightenment. What is the specific terminology they use for the establishment they oppose?
Right. They need a term for the structure that is holding back the acceleration. What is the specific terminology NRX uses for the established institutions they oppose?
That's the cathedral. It's a term NRX uses collectively for what they view as the entrenched power centers, academia, the media, and the civil service.
The established.
Exactly. They accuse these entities of functioning as a monolithic religious orthodoxy, a 20th century version of the established church.
And its purpose.
Its sole purpose, in their view, is to enforce progressive ideology and political correctness, thereby acting as a powerful brake on technological and social transformation.
So the cathedral is the collective decelerator. And how do they propose to replace this system? They advocate for a model called Neocameralism through Curtis Yarvin. That sounds highly authoritarian.
Oh, it is. Neocameralism is Yarvin's ideal governmental model, and it is explicitly anti-democratic. It calls for small, competing GovCorp.
Government corporations.
Essentially, yes.
Right.
Authoritarian city-states ruled by a national CEO or a dictator president. The state is run purely for efficiency and profit, like a highly regulated corporation.
If the state is run by a dictator CEO, where is the freedom for the citizen? I mean, how does that work?
Well, the freedom is maintained not through democratic participation, which they call voice, but through the ability to vote with your feet.
You can just leave.
Right. Land popularized this under the moniker no voice, free exit. If your authoritarian corporate state fails to deliver a good quality of life, you simply leave for a competing state within this global patchwork.
And that competition is what keeps them in line.
It forces the GovCorp to provide excellent governance, or what they call customer service, to prevent capital and skilled workers from defecting.
It's a fascinating, if very cold, logic. Governance is treated as a market commodity where competition enforces quality, regardless of political rights.
And the examples they cite are states known for high efficiency and strict non-democratic governance, like Singapore and Dubai.
It's a hard reset on the political system. It's aiming for pure efficiency and speed over messy, time-consuming democratic consensus.
This relentless drive toward an efficient final system is seductive. And this brings us back to the psychological dimension we touched on in Clarke's story.
The other engineer, Chuck, who was with George, as he fled the monastery, he felt a profound, serene relief. This seduction of obsolescence is incredibly relevant to understanding the philosophical attraction of accelerationism.
Chuck was a rational, cynical man. He expected the monks to turn violent when the world didn't immediately end.
Right.
Yet as he fled, he was overcome with this powerful sense of calm. He was momentarily seduced by the idea that humanity had done enough.
He was just tired.
He was psychologically exhausted by the sheer chaos and weight of human agency, the endless geopolitical struggles, the political fragmentation, the eternal grind of existence.
It's the hope that the machine, which is so competent and relentless, has finally finished the job for us.
Yes.
It's an end to the burden of being human.
That encapsulates the core existential relief inherent in accelerationist thought. The attraction isn't just about speed, it's about a serene post-human state where the chaos and the never-ending, intractable nature of human problems are just neutralized.
If the machine is inevitably driving toward completion, why not just embrace it?
It offers a profound sense of psychological exhaustion, the desire to surrender agency to a more powerful, more logical force.
Yeah. And this philosophical drive toward acceleration has found its perfect modern embodiment in the narrative surrounding artificial general intelligence.
Absolutely.
The current discourse doesn't present AGI as a hypothetical. It presents it as an imminent, guaranteed event, creating this powerful veneer of inevitability.
This narrative is absolutely central to the modern tech capital engine. AI firms are constantly asserting that AGI is weeks or months away.
Which seems to serve two primary functions.
Right. First, it's a direct sales pitch for massive investment, and second, it forces a sense of regulatory inertia.
Because if one company doesn't achieve it, another one will, so why bother with regulation now?
Exactly. The race to AGI has its own unstoppable momentum.
And ironically, the fear-mongering surrounding AGI, the whole existential risk or X-risk debate, it doesn't seem to slow down development. It almost seems to accelerate it.
It's the X-risk paradox. Statements from prominent industry leaders about the massive potential for benefit and the equally massive potential for catastrophic damage if it's built incorrectly.
It paradoxically reinforces the supreme capability of the machine.
Precisely. It paints AI as supremely capable, almost godlike, which in turn fuels the sense of urgency and justifies the exponential acceleration of development and the immense compute costs.
And this framing of AGI is being used as a kind of philosophical and economic trump card.
The argument to end all arguments.
Yes, and specifically, in the realm of global problems, this manifests as Technosolutionism.
Right. Technosolutionism casts AGI as the necessary, absolute solution for intractable global challenges. Take the climate crisis, for example. We see figures like Eric Schmidt dismissing the immense energy cost of massive AI data centers by arguing that since human political systems are too flawed to solve climate change, AGI offers the best shot at solving it.
That logic doesn't just justify the immense energy expenditure, it fundamentally changes how you're even allowed to view the problem itself.
It completely flattens and disguises the real complexity of challenges like climate change.
Because climate change isn't a math problem.
It's fundamentally a political, material, and international coordination problem. By arguing AGI will solve it, technologists make the political will, the need for international treaties, and the material support for human adaptation just invisible.
They frame the problem solely as one of insufficient computational power.
Which, of course, they are selling the solution to.
And this AGI inevitability narrative has deep implications for governance, echoing that NRX desire to dismantle established structures.
Absolutely. If superintelligent AI is truly right around the corner, the logic dictates that our slow, fragmented administrative state, what NRX calls the cathedral, will inevitably need to be dismantled and rebuilt for speed and efficiency.
So the promise of AGI becomes a philosophical excuse to tear down the established system and replace it with something optimized for this accelerated future.
And this constant promise of AGI, even if it's abstract, is critical for the market.
It has to be.
It sustains the investment flow necessary for the enormous compute and data infrastructure that current large-scale AI models require. This reinforces the dominance of a handful of key players who control access to these resources.
And the quest for AGI as this ever-shifting goalpost reinforces what many in the field call the bitter lesson of AI development.
Right, which is that advancements hinge primarily on scaling compute and data, not necessarily on revolutionary scientific breakthroughs.
And we have historical precedent for this kind of existential money-fueled hype cycle, don't we? The comparison to the 1980s strategic computing initiative seems important here.
It's an essential comparison to maintain perspective. In the 1980s, the Reagan administration launched the Strategic Computing Initiative, or SCI. It was a wildly ambitious program aimed at achieving general AI.
Fueled by what?
Largely fueled by anxieties about Japanese technological competition and promises of new military capabilities. They spent $1 billion, a vast sum back then, chasing the same imminent breakthrough we hear about today.
And what was the outcome of the SCI?
It is now universally acknowledged as a failure. And crucially, it failed because it focused on symbolic AI rule-based, brittle, highly structured systems, which lack the ability to scale effectively.
They were chasing the wrong paradigm?
Completely. Current AI success relies on massive data and compute scaling of neural networks. The historical failure of the SCI demonstrates that advancements rely on scaling compute and data, not necessarily on finding a single revolutionary piece of code.
So we're just repeating the hype cycle, this time focused on scale rather than structure.
In many ways, yes.
So the belief that AGI is just around the corner is based more on investment cycles and historical panic than on actual scientific consensus. What does the research community say?
There is a lot of skepticism among the actual research community. A recent survey of AI researchers showed a significant majority, 76%, assert that simply scaling up current neural net architectures is unlikely to yield true AGI.
So just making the models bigger won't get us there.
That's what they believe. Critics argue these large models can't genuinely create complex, novel concepts. They can only reflect, compress, or remix the vast trove of human-created content they were trained on.
They're more like mirrors than minds?
You could say that. There are social and cultural technologies, not sovereign intelligences.
If the models aren't genuinely intelligent in a human sense, how do industry leaders measure progress toward AGI?
They rely heavily on vague, often self-serving benchmarks, sometimes given these grandiose names like humanity's last exam.
This sounds impressive.
It does, but scholars critique these metrics sharply. As Thomas Wolfe, the chief science officer at Hugging Face, argued, these tests primarily gauge a narrow ability to answer clear, closed-ended questions.
So we're basically testing them on their ability to be obedient students.
Exactly. Not for their mastery of bold counterfactual approaches or their capacity for complex, messy, open-ended problem solving, which is the true mark of general intelligence.
And the relentless elevation of AGI ultimately leads to a displacement of expertise across society.
It has to. The AGI discourse elevates technologists as the primary experts across vast areas of society: materials discovery, patient care, educational policy.
Fields where they often lack domain-specific context.
Or what you might call skin in the game.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, workers and domain experts in these fields are often positioned as mere subjects or collateral damage of the AGI transformation,
rather than as participants and experts in how these transitions will actually take place.
The speed machine dictates the narrative, and traditional expertise is marginalized.
So we've traced this philosophical current from ancient spiritual quests through Land's anarcho-capitalist critique and into the AGI investment cycle. And now these strands have fused into a modern, explicitly utopian movement.
Eco, or effective accelerationism.
Right. What is that exactly?
Eco is fundamentally an extreme techno-optimist movement. It's a philosophical blend of effective altruism, though it rejects the AI X-risk caution, often associated with EA and Nick Land's pure accelerationism.
Then what do they advocate for?
They advocate for completely unrestricted AI development to achieve what they call a cosmic utopia.
A cosmic utopia suggests a destiny far beyond just solving human problems on Earth. What is the ultimate goal?
Their goal is explicitly defined as propelling civilization up the Kardashev gradient.
And that is?
That's a theoretical scale measuring a civilization's technological advancement based on its energy usage. The AGI ideal is maximizing energy usage to spread consciousness, both human and machine, throughout the entire universe.
And AGI is the key.
AGI is the fundamental tool required to initiate this galactic destiny.
That sounds like they're trying to fulfill the universe's fundamental programming. Do they justify this cosmic imperative scientifically?
They often ground their movement in thermodynamics, They argue that the universe naturally aims to increase entropy, the conversion of useful energy into unusable heat.
So everything runs down.
Exactly. Therefore, life, and especially AGI, serve this will of the universe by converting useful energy to useless heat at the fastest possible rate.
So their utopia is one of maximal energy expenditure.
It's a vision of perfect, maximal energy expenditure, mirroring the philosophical wastefulness celebrated by Land's earlier accelerationism. The goal isn't just progress, it's maximizing the system's entropic output.
This relentless drive toward completion, whether it's spiritual or entropic, brings us full circle to that philosophical dynamic we discussed earlier, the idea of continuous, self-referential evolution.
It's a remarkable integration of ancient and modern thought. I mean, think about the functionality of current large language models.
Okay.
They embody the Upanishadic principle, as you think, so you act. As you act, so you become, by continuously learning from input, acting on that input, and evolving the system itself.
AI acts as both teacher and student.
In a constantly reshaping dynamic, creating a feedback loop where consciousness and code co-evolve, accelerating the pattern's articulation.
And ultimately, the tension we started with, whether we are code, which is determinism, or consciousness, which is agency, it seems to dissolve when we apply the synthesizing framework of the self-simulation hypothesis.
That really is the path of philosophical reconciliation. The tension between strict determinism, which views us as simple sims in a computer simulation, and inherent agency, which believes consciousness is sovereign.
It dissolves in the strange loop.
Right. The self-simulation hypothesis suggests the universe is a mental self-simulation where a universal consciousness creates its own reality. This model is both computational and conscious.
Which implies that the deepest truths of existence are consistent across both the spiritual and the digital domains.
Exactly. And it brings us to the core unifying insight. The illusion of a separate, isolated self must be transcended.
Whether the path to completion is the compilation of the 9 billion names of God, or the full articulation of a universal computational consciousness.
The continuous pursuit of meaning, inquiry, and the expansion of awareness is the purpose itself. The journey is the purpose.
Right.
We are not just subjects waiting for the system to finish. We are active participants in an unfolding mystery.
So the quest for ultimate knowledge and the pursuit of total computation are two sides of the same drive.
The human desire to know everything and finish the pattern.
Whether we view ourselves as avatars in a cosmic game, as monks completing a divine program, or as participants in a hyper-accelerating techno-capital engine, the trajectory remains defined by that deep-seated drive towards completion. The moment of culmination, foreshadowed by the stars quietly fading in the high Himalayas, may not be violent, but serene. The quiet end of one system and the beginning of another.
A silent transition.
We have gone on a deep dive into the truth that the ancient search for meaning and the modern pursuit of total computation are two sides of the same human desire to know and finish everything.